the pageant nerd here, with the third and final instalment of my series, The Big Six Showdown, covering 6 of the biggest and most talked about international pageants. The first 2 episodes celebrated the countries and continents not only excelling at individual competitions, but also compiling impressive records across the group. In particular, those with more than 10 combined crowns at Miss World, Universe, International, Earth, Supranational and Grand International. If you haven't seen it yet, make sure you check it out. After you finish this video, of course. Having covered the who and the when, this third episode will delve into the what and the why. What does each pageant look for when selecting their queens? Why do the fortunes of countries change over time? And what other success factors are at play? And just to add a bit of spice, I recently conducted a very informal, unscientific survey over on Instagram, asking for single-word descriptions of each pageant. The good, the bad, sometimes the ugly. I'll be including some of those responses in this video. So without further ado, let's jump right on in. I'll start with the youngest and one of the most polarising competitions around. In its 8 years of existence, Miss Grand International has without doubt made an impact, both positive and not so positive. Despite its youth, Miss Grand International and the second youngest pageant in my Big Six, Miss Supranational, are arguably the most traditional beauty pageants, more narrowly focused on glamour, aesthetics and on-stage performance than other intangible elements and charitable actions. It's a case of beauty pageantry gone full circle, with some suggesting that Miss Grand International is angling to replace Miss Universe as the glitzy entertainment product, while the more established Miss Universe seeks a well-rounded queen with a diminished, albeit not erased, focus on physical attributes.
Must start doing good actions, helping others, and teaching our future generations the principle of love, tolerance, and respect.
Yes, Miss Grand International has a Stop the War motto, but you know what beauty pageant stereotype that falls into.
World peace. Definitely world peace.
That's easy.
World peace.
World peace. World peace.
While it's a high-quality event, in the lead-up, on finals night, and in the standard of its contestants and social media activity, Thailand-based Miss Grand International is somewhat known for its gimmicks and controversies. Let's take a look. Gimmicks and controversies, some argue, that prevent it from being considered in the very top tier. What do you think? Leave your comments below. Until very, very recently, the 12-year-old Miss Supranational, based in Poland, was the much less controversial sibling of fellow newbie Miss Grand International. In the past 5 years, they've added a popular men's pageant, Mr. Supranational, held the day after the women's finale. From humble beginnings in 2009, Miss Supranational has steadily grown in stature, yet it's more of an old-fashioned beauty pageant compared to the more empowered woman competitions such as Miss Earth, Miss World and Miss Universe. Finals night features lots of dancing, musical acts and parading. But Miss Supranational does have a pleasingly diverse set of contestants and semi-finalists, some of whom were selected based on earlier challenges, including modelling and social media activity. And they just crowned their first African winner. Another interesting aspect is their judging panel, made up entirely of folks associated with the pageant itself. Members of the management executive, host city representatives, and the reigning title holders among them. Unfortunately, the visibility of these judges led to some horrific online behaviour from fans after the 2021 pageant, largely directed at Miss Supranational Creative Director Andre Slay. Fans that didn't agree with the choice of winner. He in turn offended an entire nation of pageant followers by making an equally offensive blanket statement that was caught on video.
Oh, I'm so sick of these Indonesians.
The morals of this story? Making death threats to someone over a beauty pageant result. Not cool. Making derogatory remarks about an entire nation in retaliation. Also not cool. Let's face it, this is pageantry. As a fan, it's meant to be a fun diversion from the challenges of our real lives. Nothing more. Another competition with many fans and detractors, Miss Earth has just passed its 20th anniversary. But to some pageant watchers, it's earned its place amongst the major pageants, Grand Slam pageants, Big Four pageants, etc., whatever you want to call them. It's consistently attracted upwards of 80 delegates each year since the mid-2000s, and originating in the Philippines, rapidly developed a devoted following since its inception. Miss Earth naturally has a strong environmental focus, partnering with the likes of Greenpeace and the United Nations, and highlighting initiatives carried out by its reigning elemental title holders, national delegates, and even at national competitions. Nonetheless, it still has swimsuit and evening gown competitions like most other pageants.
We will because we can.
And a well-crafted final answer, naturally to an environmentally themed question, can secure the top crown.
Because together, as a global community, our micro efforts will have a macro effect to help save our home, our planet, our behavior. Thank you.
Would you say the final answer has more say in who wins Miss Earth than, say, Miss Universe? Leave your comments below. The issue of home ground advantage at all 6 pageants is something I'll cover later on in this video. But it would be remiss of me to ignore this topic when talking about Miss Earth specifically. It's true, a Filipina didn't win Miss Earth until the 8th edition, and it's equally true that other pageants regularly place their home delegate. But no other pageant has crowned a homegrown queen at anywhere near the same rate as Miss Earth, leading some to question its place amongst the elite. We'll come back to that a little later on. In its 6 decades of existence, Miss International has remained a highly traditional beauty pageant, and for the past 5 decades with a uniquely Japanese flavour, since its base moved from Long Beach, California to Tokyo. Miss International celebrates cultural understanding and friendship between nations. Its format and global television appeal, or lack thereof, has remained stagnant for some time. And while it has a rich history and conducts a very solid program of activities, Finals Night itself lacks the drama and energy of its rival pageants. But if there's one thing that's clear with Miss International, it's that it proudly marches to the beat of its own drum. It hasn't transformed itself into a made-for-TV event, instead retaining its primary objective of selecting the best candidate before an audience of VIP banquet guests. It just so happens to be streamed worldwide. Lasting for several hours, Miss International moves at a very measured pace, with the finalists delivering a heartfelt, prepared speech about cultural understanding.
If I were to be privileged enough to be your next Miss International, I can continue to stimulate children around the world to read.
It's their final elevator pitch before the judges make their choice. The Philippines and Venezuela have excelled at Miss International, in part due to their excellent preparation, impeccably in line with the more subdued, demure nature of the pageant, as compared to the fierceness of, say, Miss Universe or Miss Grand International.
3 things come to mind when I think of Miss International: culture, education, and international understanding.
Everything from styling, wardrobe, even down to hand gestures and the softness of the voice. You can see the differences in the way the delegates compete at Miss International compared to their national pageants or previous international appearances. As the first of the alphas covered here, very few would question Miss Universe's place amongst the absolute elite of international pageants. While their younger rival pageants began more recently with more substantive platforms, Miss Universe and Miss World were unashamedly created in the 1950s as bikini contests. I look into the genesis of Miss World and Miss Universe in a previous series, link is in the corner. Broadcast on the American CBS network for more than 40 years from 1960, the Miss Universe pageant ventured overseas from the early 1970s and introduced televised scoring in the late 70s, all geared towards boosting TV viewership. I'm feeling good from my head to my shoes. Miss Universe often topped the weekly US TV ratings in the 1980s. That type of success meant the formula of interview, swimsuit, evening gown, final question, tuxedoed male host and female co-hosts remained unchanged until the mid-1990s. The past quarter century has been an eventful one for Miss Universe. Sold in 1996 to Donald Trump, who then partnered with NBC, which took over broadcast rights from CBS. The pageant's global reach expanded significantly in this period, and the show's format changed too, doing away with early interview rounds, then televised scoring, increasing the amount of semi-finalists, and taking on more characteristics of a fashion show, more modelling, less talking. If anything, reducing any form of Q&A to the final round became a setup for potential viral moments. If it's a choice between an on-air stumble or an inspirational answer, you know what the TV networks would prefer these days. Incorrect crowning, anyone? IMG WME's acquisition of Miss Universe in 2015 was initially welcomed, followers excited by the prospect of a premium entertainment and talent management brand taking the reins from Trump.
I am confident.
Despite its proclamation, it was searching for a complete woman, a spokesperson, not a model. The vast majority of the winner's time is spent in New York City, even before COVID-19, attending red carpet events, doing photo shoots, and attending the occasional charity event. Miss Universe's new Social Impact Award in 2020 was an encouraging sign of a true focus on philanthropy, although unlike Miss World, its inaugural winner, Miss Bolivia, didn't receive a semi-final spot because of it. In a future video, I plan to cover the weird contradiction of Miss Universe, being one of, if not the most sought after international beauty pageant title, whilst these days being reduced to just a TV show. Stay tuned for that one. Miss World may have begun as a bikini contest, and indeed didn't stop crowning its winners in a swimsuit until 1976. But Julia Morley's creation of the Beauty with a Purpose platform in the 1970s ever so gradually repositioned the pageant into one with more substance. So much substance, in fact, that its televised finals night has done away with the standard swimsuit and evening gown competitions, or any competition for that matter. Definitely no more candidates strutting the stage in a bikini and stilettos. Swimsuit is replaced by sports, evening gown by top model, interviews by the head-to-head challenge. Plus there's talent, multimedia, and the aforementioned Beauty with a Purpose. At least one winner from each of these challenges earns a fast track into the top 40, while the rest of the placements are determined by overall performance. Selection of the eventual winner would appear to take place before the telecast, with the aforementioned events packaged into pre-taped segments and cuts made on finals night, not obviously after a new round of competition. Julia Morley, who took over as Miss World chair from her late husband Eric in 2000, sits on the judging panel each year, so you can be certain she plays a critical role in selecting the Queen to represent her organisation. Community service is central to the Miss World ethos. It's a sincere, ingrained commitment to making a positive impact, with considerable airtime given to Beauty with a Purpose and money invested to support the delegates' own initiatives, delivering legitimate results for communities in need around the world. Attracting more than 100 entrants every year since 2003, Miss World proudly celebrates the diversity of its contestants, with the Dancers of the World a beautiful reflection of that.
I shall announce the results in reverse order.
And while the placement format appears to change almost annually, it's quite common for each of the finalists to come from different continents. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but like Miss Universe, Miss World has earned its position as one of the two alpha pageants, not by mere longevity, but by carving out a niche and executing its vision to a very high standard. As I said at the outset, I'm going to briefly cover some of the more critical factors that influence the success of individual contestants and indeed entire countries. Here we go. It's no coincidence that the 6 countries who effectively own the Big 6 pageants covered here, Great Britain, United States, Japan, the Philippines, Poland, and Thailand, have a higher rate of placing in their own pageant than they do at any of the other 5, with one minor exception. As I've mentioned previously, in the absence of an official scoring system like most sports, subjectivity, patriotism, and favouritism come into play in pageantry. Don't try and convince me otherwise. Despite that placement skew, the actual success rate of homegrown title holders varies greatly, ranging from Thailand, which is yet to crown a Miss Grand International, through to the Philippines, which has won 20% of the Miss Earth titles awarded thus far. This has been the source of much criticism of Miss Earth, but if we also take a look at Miss World and Miss Universe after their first 20 years, we see that the United Kingdom had won 15% of the Miss World titles, and the USA had also won 20% of the Miss Universe crowns. Not so different after all, if indeed Miss Earth's frequency in crowning Filipinas falls away over time, like it has at Miss World and Miss Universe. We shall have to wait and see. For the uninitiated, sash factor refers to the theory that certain countries build up a reputation, usually through prior success, that positively influences their performance in subsequent pageants. Conversely, It also means outstanding delegates representing less nations, and thus with a weak sash, are often overlooked. There is clearly no hard and fast proof of this, merely observations that the women that place are not necessarily the most deserving, some advancing based on their country's past glories, while others not placing because their country lacks any such glory. May the best woman win, maybe. It's no secret that beauty pageants have been declining in popularity in Western nations for a number of decades, as a gradual shift to gender equality opens doors for women in different areas. This has multiple knock-on effects. Fewer Western women are attracted to pageantry, with some pursuing further education and a professional career, while others seeking fame and fortune via other means, such as acting, singing, being a social media influencer or YouTuber. It's also argued that a lack of affection for pageants in certain parts of the world makes it less likely for those countries to win titles, because they serve less of a purpose to the pageant organisation itself. What do you think about this? Is this the case? And if so, is that fair? Leave your comments below. Following on from the previous topic, a lack of popularity in pageantry in a given market invariably means less investment and resources devoted to training delegates for international competition. While pageant training camps and well-funded national organisations originated in the USA and South America, they're now prevalent in other regions, namely Southeast Asia, South Africa, Mexico, and Puerto Rico, among others. In particular, Venezuela, or more specifically Osmel Sosa, took pageant training to a whole new level on many fronts: catwalk, stage presence, styling, interview skills, wardrobe, and controversially, normalising cosmetic surgery as part of one's preparations. Meanwhile, the 1990s featured a host of well-educated, incredibly articulate Indian queens giving substantive, thought-provoking answers. While other countries eventually caught on, it's what stood India apart from their competition back then. Here are some memorable examples.
If I could change the past, I would love to go back to the day when late Mrs. Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi was assassinated and she was killed.
And a woman is one who shares love and who shares and shows a man what love, caring, sharing is all about. That is the sense of a woman.
The Miss Worlds that we have had up to date have been proof enough that they have had compassion for the underprivileged, not only the people who have status and stature.
I would give the women in my country the ability and the right to choose their lives, the right to choose what they want to do in their lives. And only then will there be individuals, and not just mothers, daughters, or wives, but individuals, thinking, living individuals.
This title is that dream, and in the responsibility it brings, I cherish that in some small way I could make a difference and help the dreams of others.
Well, it will have to be Audrey Hepburn. It was her inner beauty and compassion and her aura, the calm that she had inside, the woman of her that reflected.
I think pageants like the Miss Universe pageant gives us young women a platform to foray into the fields that we want to and forge ahead, be it entrepreneurship, be it the armed forces, be it politics.
Well, it's a stepping stone to anything I want to do, because Miss World is a platform which I get a chance to influence people's thoughts, minds, and actions, which is the biggest power of them all. And
on the flip side, nations that previously succeeded in pageants, for example the Nordic countries, lack the resources and indeed desire to maintain that level of success. It's become increasingly important for international pageant contenders to speak the universal language, English. For example, of the 6 winners of the Miss Universe title since IMG took over in 2015, all of them can speak English, and 5 of them did so fluently when they won their titles.
There were a ton of people from Australia that were like, wait, she's ours.
Well, because I really feel like a Miss Philippines. I feel like a Filipina, and like a Filipino woman. It just so happens that when I was growing up, I was very much an Australian, and I think you can be both.
This has seemingly put non-English speakers at a distinct disadvantage, with some of the world's most exotic countries sending delegates with English as their mother tongue and the local language as their secondary one. For pageants that claim to be representative of women worldwide, is this fair? Or are the speaking demands of the job sufficient enough to justify this unwritten prerequisite? More on that topic in a future video, but that concludes my 3-part series, The Big Six Showdown. If you enjoyed this clip, and indeed the series, please give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the bell to get alerts when I release new content. In summary, it's wonderful we have a range of pageants and so many incredible queens and kings to follow and discuss. It's equally wonderful when success at these pageants is shared with contestants from around the world, and that shared success is celebrated by all of us. Thanks for watching. This has been The Pageant Nerd. I'll be back soon, but in the meantime, it's bye for now.